When we were setting up our project, we
Di sini kita akan memberikan video tutorial dari Laravel, Inertia, dan React.js.
setting up our of creating responses or pages. And in this page, we have this Laravel block of code that is just returning a view, but instead of the same as what we did in our web helper function, but we could also use inertia itself. So it needs to be the name of the component.
Sini kita masuk ke bagian event-nya, ada yang harus ganti. Broad get extension, oh ini kita ganti ya. Return, ini kenapa ini? Render, lalu dalam render kita ganti home. Kutu bantal.
So again, back to our website, we get the same thing. Now you notice here, or the we used this resolve option, and that is basically a function that would take a name and it would look for it in this directory. And we created that home page inside our pages folder, and that's why we don't have to own it. Now let's sample resources, JS, and then pages. All right, in this video, we want to talk about route. Create a new folder component. So this is just for practice.
Nih, di page JS-nya, folder JS, folder baru yaitu folder
In that, I will have folder. I'm going to create a new folder and let's call it about. And within that, I will have an about.jsx component. So this is just for practice. We are not going to keep it. And let's create our function and also export it at the same time. So I'm going to say about and just return an h1 that says about page. And I'm going to add the class title to this one too.
about salah guys, file ya. About dot csx. Nah,
Now,
dalamnya kita kasih export function about return satu
an h1 that says about page and
about us, about
I'm going to add the class title. We can call our route facade and, for instance, use one of the HTTP methods. In this case, we want to call the get method. Then we can pass our URI. So let's say /about, and then a closure that would return our component. So again, with Laravel,
get function turn
we would just say return a view, and that would take a blade view. But now we want to use the inertia to return one of our front-end application views. So up here we used inertia render, but let's use the inertia helper function again and just pass the name of the component. Now this time our about page is inside another folder. So we can say about, which is our folder, and then our component without the extension. So about/about, and let's end this statement. Maybe I should have named that folder something else because this is a bit confusing. But anyway, if we go back to our website and go to /about, we see our text.
kita tes ini error
So anyway, statement, maybe about the extension. So say about the component, shall return and our component. So let's say that we can this one so return an h1 that says about.
wah ini guys repot dah ada guys, jadi di sini kita salin aja, kita pindahkan ke Discord. Coba kita cek si error. Kita paste di terminal guys. atau password dari terminal. Hmm. Tunggu, mau tahu tulis dulu ya. Kode install malware ya? Tak, udah install malware belum? Nah, sombong banget, cuy. Udah fail.
Or since you our URI, so component inertia, and if we go back to our folders, we statement otherwise pages folder. So again, I'm going to delete this whole folder as well, and let's just stay with the home page. Now,
Coba kita tes dia buat apakah bisa. Slash about. Makanya kalau udah masuk sampel berarti udah kelar guys ya. Nah, kita pergi ke tadi.
because this is a bit and confused text. So if we go back to our website and go to / about, we see our text. So if we have
Tadi about kita coba search for. Oh, ini ya guys. Salah ya. So, kita cek lagi. Fresh nggak bisa ya. Ini cuma untuk satu aja jadi setelah itu
we use you want to render and you don't want to use the table direct to go to the code is the same as for
ini kita hapus. Ini delete. Ini delete dulu. Oke.
what we have up here. If I comment this out and end this statement, go back to our website, let's go back to the home page, we get our text, but this is much cleaner. Let's bring back this one. And
Coba yang root bawahnya, root Inertia. Oke, ini koma home. Kamu jadi di luar ya? Tolong haluan, mulutnya dijaga. Saya lagi record. Jadi nggak saya cut loh.
and
Gue juga. Mulut lu loh. Gue lagi record juga. Lama loh record ngekat itu. Coba kita refresh.
see how we can send data to our component. This much statement is the same as what we have up here. If I comment this homepage, so this line of code is the same as what we have up here. If I comment this out and end this statement, go back to our website, let's go back to the homepage, we get our text, but this is much cleaner.
Oh, antas error. Ini belum kita ganti itu. Bentar.
Let's send an argument. So we need to is how we would send data to our blade components, and with inertia we have exactly the same thing. We are just calling it props. So let's say I have a name property and I just want to call it Mike, and I want to grab this prop in my React component. So now let's open our home.jsx and accept that name
Pelan-pelan bang.
my React.
Mike. Mike. Sini, oh. Home. Salah, salah ini. Oh alah, bang. Kalau sudah bisa ya, kali by
component. So now let's open our home.jsx and accept that name as a prop. So inside these parentheses, I'm gonna use the curly brackets and just say
from
I'm
ini
expecting a name. So instead of hello user, I want to use that dynamic name. So I can just use it down here. And if we go back to hello user, I want to use that
usernya gitu. Nah,
dynamic name. So I can just use this to
sedang
just send data from our Laravel backend application to our
ya
React application just by using Inertia.js. And I think this is a
fullkan dulu
great
lah
solution because we
baru
can
kelihatan
still
ke depan.
use Laravel routes and we don't need to use the React router and we can have all the functionality
Di sini
why we don't
kita buat folder baru ya di bagian JS-nya di luar patch tentunya kita buat folder kita itu folder baru layout folder lama kita kasih file layout CSIK oke
our navigation export default function and call it layout. And I just want to return some markup. So I will have an empty tag here. Within that, I will have my header and then a nav. Within the nav, we will have an anchor tag for homepage that says home and another link for create. We don't have this page at the moment, but we will create
layout return return ini kita buat header kami kita kasih nav kita kasih harap slash sehingga kita kasih home f juga harus sini kita buat create create
created later on to have the placeholder for all
lalu
the
di
components.
bawah
So we
ini
already know how to do this using
kita
React. We
buat
can use the special prop that is called children. So we want to accept it up here in our layout function and then pass it down here within the main tag. Now I add a class for my anchor tags and that is navlink. And now we want to use this for our components. Now there are two ways to approach this. Let's go back to Inertia documentation, then
sini juga kita balik sama
now there are two pages. If we scroll down here, we have creating layouts. So the first part is just an example, which we already did, and I will talk about this link in a moment. But then down here tells us how we can use it. We just create it. So let's go back to our project and open our home page. So this is the first way. So first, instead of exporting our home function right away, I want to delete out property on it, and which would represent I want to layout is property in this layout. We have our nav. Then after
sini export defaultnya kita hapus bawahnya kita buat home layout patch buat layout lalu di sini kita buat children
up here, and again, I have styles
Kita cek di ini apakah sudah berjalan, kita refresh. Kenapa tidak jalan?
up. So if you go back to our
Oh
website, we
alah,
have our navigation up here, and
ini ya
again,
guys, di
I have
bawah.
styles applied already.
Baru
So this is
coba. Nah, masih nggak jalan. Export default home. Ya, ya. Crash. Loh, masih nggak jalan juga. Salah di mana ini? Home layout. Patch. Sini ya. Oh, oh, ini nih itu ya. Children typo. Oke, udah bisa. Ya Allah, masih belum bisa. Children. Patch.
the first way, and we can repeat to set the layout to whatever layout we just created. So let's go back to our project. But then the spot is just an example, which we already did, and I will talk about this link in a moment. But for the first presentation component,
Nah, tadi guys, jadi kita lupa menambahkan di layout yang ini children-nya, jadi nggak muncul, sekarang sudah muncul. Tuh, kita lanjut.
tiles up that
Sedikit nge-lag ya.
needs to be shared among and set just return this to the way it was. So just like this. So now we are back to just return this to the way it was. So just like this.
Setelah itu cuma untuk nyoba doang ternyata guys. Kita Ctrl Z, 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 Z. Sampai mana ya?
Open up just like this.
Oke, awal ya. Z, Z.
We can set a default layout for our whole application. So just like this. So now and in here, I want to set the page layout before it inside a variable first. And instead of returning the pages right away, I want to save it inside a variable first and then use that same page to set the
FGSX.
default layout. So I can
Kita
say
ganti
page default layout and set it to itself if it exists, or to the layout that I specify. So this side of this or statement is going to be similar to what we did on the home component. We want to pass a function here and accept a page parameter and then use our layout. So we need to import it.
for the page.
Page on the home of this if it exists, or to the layout that I specify.
Page for layout.
So this is home component, then use our layout. So we need to import it.
Page layout.
And then down here, we want to say that the children prop of this layout is going to be this page. So I can just pass it within these curly brackets. And then at the end, we want to return that page we just created. So to recap, we just say if the page has a default layout, then use that one. If it doesn't, use our layout we just created. That means if I add a layout to my homepage, then layout we just created. That means if I see our default layout website, now we have our homepage layout we want to.
Wah, ada salah lagi nih. Page default layout children, benar.
Be ignored. And
Children page. Oh,
means if I add a, if it doesn't, use our layout which
kurangin guys. Pakai. Di sini ya ternyata kurangnya. Kurang kelas. For. Nah, coba terus mesti aja. Layout. Coba hapus layout. Titik. Kita cek. Nah, akhirnya sudah bisa. Kita lanjut lagi ke videonya.
to change this dot to an. So now we have our layout and we have
Ini diganti guys. Bilang kan, Tailwind-nya kan.
too late for it. But so a traditional server, if I press a anchor tag in our link, JS, and then replace all these
Layout. Di sini kita tambahkan
that component from inertia, and that is link. So instead of these A tags, I can say link that needs to be imported from inertia.js and then replace all these A tags with a link. So again, we don't have this create page, but I'm just going to create a link for it anyway. So with that simple change, inertia would intercept that call and we will not make a server call. Our request response, and it has option for a moment that they test, we get this 404 in a model
oke.
time. Our routes are sitting in our web.php, which is part. All right, in this video, I want to progress in the easy. So let's go to our project tag here that is going to the same.
Kita ke home. Kita buat home.
So I can use the JavaScript date class and then use the time string function to get the current time. So if we go back to our website, we have the time. Use the time string function to get.
Kita coba new date to string. Oke, coba kita coba. Nah, dia ada tanggal ya. Tanggal hari ini ya tentunya.
You can see it's to get to it. So I can just add some
Lokal itu sama aja lah.
classes here and I want to set it to block
Tembok.
and margin top maybe 1000 pixel, and let's see how it looks. So in our website I have to scroll down to get to the date, which pixel.
Bukan date ya, coba kita time. Kalau di sini di kelas name log mc 1000 pixel. Hey, apa ini? Log.
Here maybe. So if I refresh the page, you can title to it so we can see better, right?
Title. Kita cek tuh.
So it's down here now. So if I refresh the page, you can see the time is changing. Now I want, and that is the normal behavior of an anchor. Import it and change both links. So now if it from inertia, again we need to import
Kita juga ganti jadi ini.
it and change both links. So now if I click on it, we still see the same thing, right? We can easily fix this by adding a preserve scroll attribute to this link component. That's all we have to do. Now, if we go back to our website and I click on this link, you notice the time is being updated, but the page is not back to the top. So we are preserving the scroll position. And you can read more about this at the top. So we are preserving the scroll position. And you can read more about this at the top. So we are preserving the scroll updated, but the page is not back to the top. So we are preserving the scroll position. And you can read more about this link component. That's all we have to do. Now, if we go back to our website and I click on this link, you notice the time is being updated, but the page is not.
To local time strings.
We can easily link. So we management to a button. So when the users click on that button, scroll position, and let's talk So in this video, we want to talk about while they are PHP and a second before we get our view.
Sekarang kita masuk ke web PHP. Inertia render di bagian sininya kita buat sleep.
Reload the page, you notice the page is loading, and after a second, we get our page. Now let's increase this number so we see the effect much better. Again, if I reload the page, you notice home link. We have this blue indicator that it just appeared while the page was loading, and that is the progress indicator from Inertia.js. By default, this option is enabled when there is a process 1 second before we get our view. And this function basically delays the process. So let's go back to our website. So now if I function before returning our view. So let's say 1 second before we get our view. A spinner to show to the users while they are waiting for some process to be done. For example, let's go to our project and open web.php, and I'm going to use the sleep function before returning our view. So let's say 1 second before we get our view. And this function basically delays the process. So let's we get our reload the page when it was loaded is in customize this in our app.jsx. Right after setup, we want to use the progress option. And for instance, let's change the color to white or whatever color you prefer. So you can pass CSS color properties here and that would be applied. So back to our project. So you can pass home again. You notice this white indicator
Buat apa? Jadi kayak ketika kita reload, nah ini bisa ya kita coba FF. Hmm.
applied. So whatever color you option and
Hmm. Bisa guys, guys. Baru bisa nih lihat warnanya apa. Eh, kita ada warnanya sih. Oke.
for instance, let's change the color to white or whatever color you prefer. So you can pass CSS color properties here and that would be applied. So back to our project, if I press home again, you notice this white indicator
Nah,
after to false to customize. After the color, not only we have the bar up here and set it to true. And now if we press on the home page, not only we have the bar up there, but we have the spinner on the top right corner, as you can see up here. And if you
oke,
don't want the
video kali ini
progress bar at all,
kita akan
the
lanjut
progress
ke
indicator
video
using inertia to false, and
lanjutan.
that would completely disable it. And that's about progress indicator using an
Apakah sudah jalan? Bukan. Tuh, bisa ya guys. Oke, sekian untuk video kali ini. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.